Lara Sharpless. Imagine, you and your friends decide to check out a new restaurant. Upon arriving, you are encapsulated by the wonderful smells and make your way up the front stairs to the door. You are seated next to a window where you look out to see a group of people approaching. You then notice that one of those people uses a wheelchair. That person is unable to come and enjoy a meal with their friends, stopped only by a few stairs. There is no accessible entrance, and they are forced to find somewhere else to eat. 7 million Americans face this reality because they require assistive devices for mobility. By being inaccessible, communities are shutting out an entire group of people. According to the census website, the data collected on the census determines how billions of dollars in federal funding is put into states and communities each year. Yet, there is no question regarding disability. How are communities supposed to become more accessible if they can't receive the funding to do so? Our campus prides itself on being inclusive for people regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, race, or ethnicity. But what about ability? As a society, are we privileging ability over disability and leaving out millions of people just because it's easier than making things more accessible? How are we supposed to count everyone if we were ignoring some of the numbers? As someone with rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune disease that attacks my joints, I often rely on things being accessible. As an advocate for accessibility, I want to demonstrate that spreading inclusion to those who may move or think differently is easier than you may realize. The 3 easiest ways to become an advocate for accessibility and inclusion are to be aware, be respectful, and be a voice. By being all 3, we become advocates. We can help create a more inclusive environment for everyone of every ability. The first step in becoming an advocate is to be aware that inaccessibility happens. But in order to do so, we need to know what inaccessible means. In a dictionary sense, inaccessible means unable to be reached or used. But in actuality, it means so much more. When we're toddlers, our parents put child locks on the cabinets so we cannot access them. For someone who uses crutches or a wheelchair to get around, something as trivial as a few stairs acts as a giant child lock to keep them out. Quickly, they are dehumanized and made to believe that their presence does not matter. The U.S. Census Bureau refers to people with disabilities as a hard-to-count population, but are not putting any changes in place to make it easier. If we continue to remain ignorant, we're only adding to the barriers of inaccessibility. By noticing when things or places aren't accessible, we begin to appreciate when changes are put into place. When I was a freshman here at Juniata, I volunteered to be a lunch buddy during an open house. As I was leaving, I heard a faculty member ask a girl what she thought of the campus. I will never forget her response. She said, "This campus isn't made for me. I can't come here." This prospective student used a wheelchair, and at the time, Ellis Hall did not have an elevator. I honestly don't know how she got into Baker, but her response made me realize how hard it would be to live on this campus as a person who uses a wheelchair or other mobility device. When my older sister became a student here in 2013, Nathan Hall didn't exist, meaning that not one of the residence halls had an elevator. Over the last 7 years, I have watched Juniata transform into a more inclusive and accessible place, with the addition of elevators to Ellis and Good Hall, or what I like to call Better Hall, and bathrooms that are larger and more accommodating for wheelchair users. These changes have been crucial in continuing to create an inclusive environment on campus. But with changes to our facilities, we also have to challenge the attitudes and perceptions of our community members, which comes in the form of respect. The next step in becoming an advocate is to be respectful. I'm sure most of us are aware of the never-ending battle of trying to find a parking spot on this campus. Lots fill up quickly, and it seems like there are never enough spots. The Americans with Disability Act requires that for every parking lot of 100 spots, at least 4 of them have to be handicap accessible. I spoke to our former director of public safety, Jesse Leonard, and I asked him how often they write tickets for people parking illegally in handicapped spots. He told me that he probably hasn't had to write anyone up for that in the last 3 years. But he did clarify that just because no one has been issued a ticket didn't mean it doesn't happen. People tend to pull into these spots, throw their four-ways on, and quickly run inside. Not only is it illegal to park in handicap spots, it's disrespectful. These spots are designed to be wider and closer to buildings so people can get from their vehicles to the buildings more efficiently. Although it may not be an issue on our campus, it is across the country. A 2018 study by Braun Ability found that 74% of people have personally seen a handicap accessible parking space being improperly used. 74%. That is equal to 300 of you in this room witnessing the misuse of accessible parking. When people who don't absolutely need accessible spots use them, it once again creates a barrier and once again shows exclusion. An article from the United Nations says all human beings have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Instead of creating barriers, we should be building bridges by using our voices to speak up. Becoming an advocate for accessibility and inclusion requires that we be aware and be respectful, but arguably the most important step is being a voice. By speaking up for injustices when you see them, you are bringing more attention to them with the intent of solving the problem. I understand that not all problems regarding inaccessibility can be solved by one person, but one person can help change the little things. Let's go back to the parking spot example. Last spring, I noticed dumpsters outside of res halls in the handicap spots. These dumpsters were to be used for students while they moved out of their rooms. I emailed Matthew Damschroeder, our Dean of Students, and asked why they were there and blocking the handicap spots. He told me that it was a mistake by the company that the school gets the dumpsters from, and that he would make sure that they were moved. Within 24 hours, the spots were freed up again. I saw an injustice, used my voice, and spoke up. It didn't take much time or effort, and it was fixed relatively quickly. We may not be able to fix the census as quickly, but we can raise our voice for inclusion. Being a voice for people who may not have one or feel like they can't use theirs is the heart of being an advocate. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "It is not possible to be in favor of justice for some people and not be in favor of justice for all people." As a community, it is our duty to advocate for those who are underrepresented, who are not counted, who face injustices that they cannot control. Juniata is working to increase accessibility for everyone who visits campus. There is still a lot to be done, but the effort is being made. More places need to be like Juniata. More places need to strive to become accessible for everyone. If the census isn't counting people with disabilities in their data, we can make them count within our communities. If we all be aware, be respectful, and be a voice, we can make our lives, our community, and our world more accessible and more inclusive for everyone.